welcome back. Or, if this is your first time here, welcome. Tonight, I'm going to show you how the Bishop of Winchester ran the most profitable sex trade in medieval England for nearly 4 centuries. Not in the shadows, not in secret, but as the landlord, the regulator, and the primary beneficiary of 18 licensed brothels on the south bank of the Thames. Think of this as a history walkthrough, first-person perspective. You're the protagonist, I'm just the voice in your ear, showing you where to go and what it costs. You'll learn the specific ordinances that governed every transaction, rules so detailed they specified what the women could wear, how long you had to stay, and exactly how much rent they paid the bishop for the privilege of working in his houses. You'll learn why crossing London Bridge meant stepping out of the jurisdiction where sex was a crime and into a zone where it was regulated and taxed by one of the most powerful prelates. Here's one detail to prove I'm not exaggerating. The women who worked these houses were legally required to stay with you all night, not an hour, not until you were finished, all night until morning. The ordinance was explicit. No single woman to take money to lie with any man, but she lie with him all night till the morrow. That wasn't romance. That was the bishop's strategy for keeping drunken clients off the streets and maintaining the legal fiction that these were boarding houses, not brothels. But here's what I won't tell you yet. What happened to her if you left before dawn? The penalty fell on her, not you, and it tells you everything about who this system was designed to protect. The deeper question we're exploring tonight is this. How do you run a business model where the sin is the product, the church is the landlord, and the whole system depends on pretending it's something else entirely? The Bishop of Winchester managed it for 385 years. By the end of tonight, you'll understand exactly how. But first, let's be honest about why you're here. You've never paid 14 pence a week to rent a room in a medieval brothel district. But you have paid for dinner at a place expensive enough to signal intent. You've bought gifts calibrated to expectation. You've engaged in the performance where everyone knows what the evening is building toward, but nobody says it directly. The difference between you and the man crossing London Bridge in 1450 isn't the transaction. It's just how explicitly it's priced. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at Stew Lane in the Vintry Ward on the north bank of the Thames. The lane's name isn't subtle. It's a directional marker, telling you exactly where the wherries departing from this jetty are headed. But tonight, you're not taking a boat. You're walking. You want to cross London Bridge. The first thing that hits you isn't visual, it's the sound. The water roaring beneath the bridge is deafening. The bridge's 19 stone arches are protected by massive timber breakwaters that choke the Thames into a series of narrow sluices. During tidal flux, the difference in water levels between the upstream and downstream sides can reach 6 feet. The result is a thundering cascade that forces you to shout to be heard. You're walking south, leaving the city of London behind. Above the southern gatehouse, you see them, the heads, traitors' skulls, dipped in tar and impaled on iron spikes, bristling against the sky like a grotesque forest. By century's end, visitors will count over 30. You pass beneath them, and something shifts. You've just crossed out of the Lord Mayor's jurisdiction and into the liberty of the Clink, a zone where the King's writ doesn't run the same way, and the Bishop of Winchester holds court. The air changes. You're in Southwark now, and the smells hit you in layers. Wood smoke from the bathhouse furnaces, the sharp tang of tanning pits, roasting meat from the cookshops, and underneath it all, the metallic rot of the Thames mud. This is the dumping ground for everything the city won't tolerate. Bear-baiting pits, noxious industries, and the stews. The stews. 18 of them, stretching along Bankside, each one marked by a painted sign facing the river, not hung on brackets like city shops, but painted directly on the whitewashed walls. so they're visible to anyone approaching by boat. You can see them from here. The cardinal's hat, the cross keys, the boar's head, the swan, the bell. They named a brothel after the Pope's headwear, and nobody stopped them. Let's pause here, because what you're looking at isn't a criminal enterprise. It's a regulated industry operating under a legal framework so detailed that it governs everything from the women's clothing to the maximum debt a brothel keeper can hold over them. The rules date back, supposedly, to 1161, to a parliament under Henry II. That's probably fabricated, a convenient claim to ancient authority. But the ordinances themselves are real, recorded in 15th century manuscripts, and they tell you exactly how this system works. You have a choice to make. The cardinal's hat is closest, notorious and expensive. The castle sits further down, cheaper, rougher clientele. The boar's head is mid-tier, predictable. Which door do you knock on? You choose the cardinal's hat, because if you're crossing the bridge for this, you're not settling for the cheap option. You've brought coin, 6 pence, maybe 8. For context, a laborer earns 4 pence a day. A skilled craftsman earns 6. What you're about to spend represents a day and a half of a working man's wages. But you're not a laborer. You have access. You have choices. You enter through the river entrance, a private stair that leads directly from the Thames into the house. No need to be seen from the street. The hall inside is warm, maintained by a furnace below that once heated the bathhouse this building used to be. The term stew comes from the French estuve, meaning a heated room. Originally, these were bathhouses, places for communal washing and steam. Over time, the association between nakedness and opportunity transformed the word into a euphemism. The stewholder greets you. He's polite, deferential, you have money, and that makes you the customer. He asks if you're carrying weapons. You hand over your knife. This isn't paranoia, it's regulation. Drunken men with blades are bad for business. The hall smells of wood smoke and sweat, ale and something floral, rose water maybe. There are benches, a table, the murmur of other voices. And then you see her. She's wearing a striped hood, a legal requirement that marks her as a single woman of the stews, and no apron. The lack of an apron is critical. In medieval society, the apron is the uniform of the good wife, the respectable woman managing her household. By banning it, the church enforces a visual distinction. This woman cannot pass as respectable. She is marked by what she's not allowed to wear. The locals have a name for women like her, Winchester geese. It's a triple brand, owned by the bishop, marked by the symptoms of the burning disease, and named for the hissing sound of a goose, the call of solicitation. But the rest of her clothing is fine, better than you expected. A wool gown in deep blue, the fabric clinging to her waist before falling in soft folds. Her hair is visible beneath the striped hood, dark, pinned up but with strands framing her face. She's younger than you thought, maybe 25, and her skin is smooth, unblemished. That matters. The ordinances are strict about health. No stewholder to keep any woman with the perilous infirmity of burning. The fine is 100 shillings, 5 pounds, nearly a year's wages for a laborer. So the stewholder inspects his tenants weekly, and any woman showing symptoms is evicted immediately. She approaches you, not aggressively, not with crude solicitation. She smiles, and her voice is soft, pitched low so only you can hear. Good evening. She places her hand lightly on your forearm. You can smell her, rose water, yes, and something earthier underneath, sweat and skin. She's close enough that you feel the warmth radiating from her. Will you stay the night? She asks. That's the transaction, not an hour, the entire night. The ordinance serves multiple purposes. It keeps you off the streets, maintains the legal fiction that this is an inn, and limits her to 1 client per night. You agree, you hand over 6 pence. The coin disappears into a purse at her belt. She leads you by the hand through a narrow corridor to a chamber at the back of the house. It's small, partitioned with thin walls. You can hear the murmur of voices, the creak of a bed frame, the rhythmic sound of another transaction next door. The room contains a bed, rope-strung, with a straw mattress and a wool blanket, a small table, a basin of water, and a candle. She closes the door, and for the first time, you're alone with her. She moves to the basin, washes her hands, and gestures for you to do the same. Then she turns to you and pauses, studying your face. "What do you like?" she asks. Not a formality. She waits for your answer, adjusts her approach based on what you tell her. When she moves to the laces of her gown, her pace matches yours. She's reading you, performing the fiction that this is mutual, that you're not just another man who crossed the bridge with coins in his pocket. The illusion is professional. And for the length of the night, it works. Let's pause here, because what happens next is not the story. What happens next is private, transactional, and exactly what you paid for. The story is the machinery. The woman in front of you, a single woman, in the language of the Ordinances, is paying 14 pence a week in rent to the stewholder for this chamber. That's 3.5 days of labor wages. An extortionate sum for a room this small, set high deliberately because it forces her to work, to generate revenue that flows upward. She's not a slave. The ordinances are explicit. She cannot be detained against her will. She can leave whenever she wants. And the stewholder is forbidden from lending her more than 6 shillings and 8 pence. Any debt beyond that is legally void. These rules prevent debt bondage, maintaining the fiction that she's a free agent, a tenant, not property. But here's the machinery. If she's paying 14 pence a week in rent, limited to 1 client per night, needing to eat and clothe herself, how many nights a week does she need to work? If you paid her 6 pence, she needs at least 3 clients a week just to make rent. More if business is slow, more if the stewholder is charging her inflated prices for food, skirting the ordinances. And where does that 14 pence go? To the stewholder, who pays his rent to the Bishop of Winchester. But the real profit isn't in the rent, it's in the fines. Every time a stewholder is caught selling meat on a fast day, or violating one of the 36 ordinances, he's fined. And those fines are regular, standardized, predictable. They function less like punishment and more like a licensing fee. The bishop monetized the infractions he theoretically prohibited. The stews even closed when Parliament was in session. Can't have lawmakers crossing the bridge during legislative recess. The rules had priorities. The Bishopric of Winchester pulled in £4,000 a year. In modern terms, that's millions in purchasing power. The bishop lived in a palace just down the road, a grand edifice with a great hall and a rose window, built in the 12th century. He could see the bankside brothels from his window. The proximity wasn't accidental. It was integration. The theological justification goes back to Augustine. Suppress prostitution, and capricious lusts will overthrow society. Thomas Aquinas doubled down, comparing prostitution to a sewer in a palace. Take away the cesspool, and the palace will become an unclean and evil-smelling place. In this worldview, the brothel is a sanitary necessity, containment for male desire, protecting the chastity of wives and daughters. So the bishop isn't just a landlord, he's the custodian of the sewer, and that makes him indispensable. You wake before dawn, the candle has burned down. She's still asleep, her breathing soft and even. The room is cold now, you dress quietly, and as you reach for the door, she stirs. "Leaving already?" she asks. You nod. You have work. You need to cross back before the bridge gets crowded. She doesn't stop you, but here's what the ordinance says. If she takes money for less than a full night, she can be fined. Not you, her. The system protects the customer and punishes the provider. You could leave whenever you wanted. She bears the risk. Would you stay until dawn if you knew she'd pay for your early exit? You hand the stewholder a penny on your way out, a tip, a bribe, whatever you want to call it, and walk into the pre-dawn Southwark air. The streets are quiet. You make your way back toward the bridge, past the silent bulk of the bishop's palace, past the garden walls of the other stews. As you walk, you pass another landmark, the Crossbones graveyard. Let's pause here, because this is where the Winchester geese end up. The church that licenses their lives refuses to sanctify their corpses. If a woman dies in her sin without renouncing her trade, she's denied burial in consecrated ground. Instead, she's interred here, in an unconsecrated plot at the junction of Red Cross Way and Union Street. The locals call it the Single Woman's Churchyard. Archaeologists excavated this site in the 1990s. What they found tells the story the Ordinances don't. The skeletons showed high infant mortality, vast numbers of fetal and infant remains. The geese were mothers, and their children often died alongside them. The bones were scarred by advanced syphilis, saber shins, pitted skulls, and the burials were dense, bodies piled atop one another, filling every inch of ground available for the outcast dead. Thousands of women, thousands of children, all within sight of the bishop's rose window. But that's decades away from your night in 1450. Right now, syphilis hasn't arrived yet. The great pox is still a rumor from the future. The women you met tonight will die of other things: childbirth, malnutrition, infections. Medieval medicine can't treat. But they won't die of syphilis, not yet. You cross back over London Bridge as the sun rises. The water still roars beneath you. The tarred heads still bristle above the gate. You're back in the city, back under the Lord Mayor's jurisdiction, where sex is a crime and the ward moat polices morality. But you've just returned from a place where none of that applied, where the transaction was legal, regulated, taxed, where the Bishop of Winchester held court and the women wore striped hoods, and the whole system ran on the fiction that it was something other than what it was. This system lasted 385 years. From 1161 to 1546, the Southwark stews operated openly, licensed by the church, regulated by ordinances, protected by the liberty. They survived the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, when Wat Tyler's rebels burned the stews. They survived the initial panic of syphilis in the 1490s. They survived Henry VII's attempt to close them in 1506. But in 1546, Henry VIII, in the last year of his life, after dissolving the monasteries and breaking the power of the church, finally shut them down. The proclamation cited abominable license and the spread of disease. A trumpet sounded in Southwark. The signs came down from the whitewashed walls. Prostitution didn't end, it just moved. From the regulated district of Bankside into the unregulated shadows, Clerkenwell, Shoreditch, the hidden tenements of the city. The stewholder, a tenant of the bishop with legal standing, was replaced by the bod, a criminal operator, with no check on exploitation. The women lost the protections of the ordinances, the rent caps, the debt limits, the freedom of movement. And the Bishop of Winchester lost his £4,000 income stream. So here's the answer to the question we started with. How did the church turn sin into the most profitable real estate in London? By refusing to call it sin. By framing it as sanitation, as containment, as a necessary evil. By creating a legal fiction so elaborate, stew houses as inns, prostitutes as tenants, transactions as lodging, that everyone could pretend it was something else. The machinery worked because everyone benefited from the pretense. You got your night, she got her rent, the stewholder got his profit, the bishop got his fees, and society got to maintain the illusion that the palace stayed clean because the sewer was properly maintained. But the sewer was never separate from the palace. The bishop's rose window and the cardinal's hat stood within spitting distance. The sacred and the profane weren't neighbors. They were landlord and tenant. And the coin that passed from your hand to hers, from her to the stewholder, from the stewholder to the bishop, was the same coin that built the great hall. The women of Cross Bones are still there, their bones bearing witness to a system that used them, profited from them, and discarded them in unconsecrated ground. The bishop's palace still stands, a tourist attraction now, its connection to the brothels a footnote in the guidebooks. And the Thames still flows past Bankside, indifferent to the ghosts of the cardinal's hat, and the women who wore the striped hoods. For 385 years, the church ran the most successful sex trade in medieval England by refusing to admit that's what it was.